My name is Anna Montgomery, and I'm 42 years old. I've worked as a senior project coordinator at Greenline Architecture for over 12 years. Throughout my career, I've always prided myself on being a problem solver. My passion is designing spaces that serve a purpose, from public parks to sustainable buildings. I have worked tirelessly for years, building a career I thought was secure. But all of that changed the day my so-called colleague, Alex, decided to steal my designs and take credit for them. It all started with a regular morning at the office. I had just finished my first cup of coffee when I walked into my manager's office to go over the progress on our Portland waterfront project. But the moment I walked in, I knew something was off. Alex was there, standing with my boss, Karen. The two of them exchanged glances, and I felt an immediate sense of unease. "Anna, I'm afraid we'll have to put the Portland project on hold," Karen said, glancing at Alex, who seemed to be holding something in his hands, something that caught my eye. It was a design proposal I'd spent months developing. It was my concept, my hard work. But somehow it was now in Alex's hands, with his name attached to it. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. Karen didn't answer right away. She glanced at Alex, who avoided eye contact. "Alex has been handling some of the updates for the Portland project, and we think his design is the best fit moving forward," Karen said, clearly uncomfortable. I looked at her in disbelief. "What design? That's my design. I created it. I've been working on it for months, putting in long hours after work. This is mine." But Alex, with his ever-confident smile, stepped in. "Anna, I just made a few changes to your concept to make it more practical, to make it work with the current budget and timelines." His words stung. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had taken my design, altered it slightly, and now he was presenting it as his own. For months, he'd been claiming my ideas, and now it was happening right in front of me. "You've been using my designs for your own gain?" I asked, my voice steady but shaking with anger. Alex shrugged nonchalantly. "It's all part of the process, Anna. You should know that by now." I turned to Karen, expecting her to back me up, but instead, she sat there, quietly, watching, her eyes narrowing slightly. "It's been decided, Anna. Alex will lead the Portland project moving forward. You're not as effective as you used to be." I felt my blood run cold. For the first time in my career, I realized what was happening. It wasn't just a simple disagreement. Alex had been systematically stealing my designs and presenting them as his own. All those late nights, those endless revisions, those designs that I had poured my soul into, they were now being used to propel Alex's career. The silence in the house was overwhelming. As the clock ticked on, I sat there in the kitchen, my heart still racing from the conversation with Ethan. It felt like a cruel twist of fate, but the hardest part wasn't over yet. The pain, the confusion, it was all there, but I knew I had to take control. I had to understand what had happened. Why? Why had Ethan chosen this moment to tell me that he was leaving? What had driven him to betray me like this? I couldn't focus. My mind kept spinning back to his words, his cold, emotionless words. I need something else. Something else. Those words kept echoing in my head. What did they mean? Was there someone else? Was this just about a personal crisis he was going through? Was I to blame for not noticing sooner? Or was there more to it? The doubt gnawed at me. I grabbed my phone and opened it, my fingers trembling slightly. I needed answers, something concrete to cling to, but there was nothing. No messages from him, no signs. He had been so careful, so distant these past few months, but I had attributed it to stress from work, to the pressures of life. Now, all of it felt like a lie, a carefully orchestrated performance.
I walked through the house, stopping at the hallway mirror where I caught a glimpse of my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked lost, confused, vulnerable, and broken. But there was something else behind her eyes, too. A flicker of resolve, of determination. I wasn't going to let this ruin me. I wasn't going to let Ethan take everything from me without a fight. I walked to my office, the one place in the house where I could think clearly. It was the room where I had always felt most at home, organizing my work, my life, my thoughts. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen. I knew what I needed to do. I needed answers. I started with the simplest thing, checking our finances. Ethan and I had always managed our finances together. We had joint accounts, separate savings for our future, and a budget that had allowed us to live comfortably. But now, as I opened the banking app on my laptop, something caught my eye immediately. Small, but unmistakable. A series of unusual transfers. My fingers hovered over the mouse, the blood draining from my face as I clicked into the details. Large sums of money, regularly withdrawn, transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened as I scrolled through the transactions, some of them dating back months, each one more significant than the last. And then I saw it, a large transfer to an account under the name Cassandra W. Cassandra. The name hit me like a slap across the face. I'd heard it before. It was the name of Ethan's coworker, a woman he had mentioned in passing more than once. But I hadn't thought much of it before. I had trusted him. I had trusted us. My hands shook as I traced the transaction history. More transfers, each one larger than the last, moving money away from our joint account and into accounts tied to people and entities I didn't know. I felt the ground slip beneath me. This was no mistake. This wasn't some financial mismanagement. Ethan had been planning this for months. He had been siphoning off money to secure his future, his new life, the one that didn't involve me. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding in my chest. How could I have been so blind? How had I missed all the signs? Ethan hadn't just been unfaithful with his emotions. He had been physically preparing to leave me, to start over, at my expense. I stood up, pacing around the room, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts at once. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. He had taken everything from me, the trust, the love, and now even the financial security we had built together. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it, not without facing the consequences. The thought of confronting him made my stomach churn. I knew he would lie, deny everything, try to turn the tables on me. But I had to do something. I had to take action before he walked away, leaving me in the wreckage of our life. I grabbed my phone and quickly dialed David, one of Ethan's colleagues at work, and someone I had trusted for years. "David, it's Anna," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "I need your help. Can you tell me anything about Cassandra Y? Is she connected to Ethan in any way?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line before David's voice came back, cautious. "Anna, you don't want to get involved with this. Cassandra's been around for a while. I wasn't sure if Ethan was serious about her or just playing around, but I think it's clear now. He's been spending a lot of time with her, more than with you. I didn't know how to tell you." I felt a lump form in my throat. I had suspected something, but hearing it out loud from someone else made it all the more real. "David, I need everything. Emails, records, anything you have about them," I said, my voice growing firm. "Please, I need to know the truth." "He'll get it to you. Just give me a few hours. But Anna, I think you need to prepare yourself. This is going to be big," he said, his tone filled with concern. I hung up the phone and sat back down at my desk. I knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be hard. But as I stared at the bank statements, the truth became clearer. Ethan hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had been systematically preparing to steal from me our home, our savings, our future. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him walk away with everything without consequences. The battle for my life, my future, had just begun, and I was ready to fight.
I sat in the living room, my heart racing in my chest, waiting for Ethan to come home. The house, once a place of comfort and warmth, felt cold now. The furniture, the walls, the air around me, all felt like they were closing in. Every part of me wanted to rush in and confront him immediately, to demand answers, to make him see the magnitude of what he had done. But I knew that would be too easy. I had to remain calm, to gather all the strength I could muster. This was not just about catching him in a lie. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. The phone buzzed beside me. It was a text from David. David, I've got everything you asked for. We need to talk. Call me when you're ready. I stared at the message, my hands gripping the edge of the couch. It wasn't just about the money or the affair anymore. It was the betrayal of trust, the years of deception, and the realization that the person I had given everything to had been planning to throw it all away. A car door slammed outside, breaking my reverie. Ethan was home. My stomach churned. I didn't know what kind of man he would be when he walked through that door, whether he would try to beg for forgiveness or continue pretending he had done nothing wrong. But what I did know was that this conversation would change everything. There was no going back. The door opened with a creak, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his eyes avoiding mine. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. His shoulders hunched, and the tension in his face was palpable. His gaze met mine briefly, but quickly shifted to the floor. There was no, "Hey, how was your day?" or "I missed you," like there used to be. Only silence. I didn't waste any time. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm, but filled with a quiet power that seemed to echo in the empty room. I wasn't going to beg him for answers. I wasn't going to crumble. He could see that in my eyes. He dropped his keys on the table, avoiding my gaze, and took a seat across from me. His movements were slow, deliberate. It felt like he was stalling, gathering his thoughts, trying to come up with some excuse that would make everything okay again. But I wasn't buying it. "I know everything," I said, staring him down. "I know the transfers, the secret accounts, the money you've been siphoning off for months. I know about Cassandra." My heart tightened, but I didn't allow it to show on my face. "I know what you've been doing, Ethan." His face went pale. He looked as if I had slapped him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He tried again, his voice cracking slightly. "Sophia, I never meant it for it to come to this. It wasn't supposed to happen this way." I couldn't help it. The anger that had been building inside me for days, weeks, months, it erupted. "So what? You thought you could just sneak around behind my back, drain our savings, and leave me with nothing? You thought you wouldn't notice? Or did you think you'd just get away with it, just like you've gotten away with everything else?" His head hung lower. I could see the guilt written all over his face now. He wasn't defending himself anymore. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He was just caught. He stood up and started pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. "Ethan, you stole from me. From us. You stole everything we built together. And you did it for her, didn't you? You did it to build a life with Cassandra." My voice shook with the weight of it, but I held it together. I wasn't going to let him see me break. Not now. He looked at me then, his eyes full of shame and guilt, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he stood up and started pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. "I didn't want to hurt you, Sophia. I didn't want to destroy everything, but
I couldn't help it. I was drowning. You were too focused on your career, and I felt like I was invisible. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind spun, trying to make sense of his words. Neglected? I echoed, my voice rising. You think that's why you did this? You think taking our money and running off with another woman was the answer? That it was all my fault? I spent years supporting you, Ethan. Years. And now you want to blame me? He never meant to blame you, he said, his voice low, barely a whisper. But I thought I could have both. I thought I could have her and you too. I thought I could have it all. I sat back down, trying to calm myself, but the tears were threatening to break through. You thought you could have both? I repeated, my voice hollow. And what about me? What about our marriage? What about the years I gave you, the sacrifices I made so you could chase your dreams, while I put mine on hold? What was I to you, Ethan? A backup plan? He opened his mouth to speak again, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. No. Don't say it's not what you meant. Don't try to justify it anymore. I've heard enough. I stood up slowly, my gaze never leaving his. This isn't just about the money. This isn't just about the affair. This is about respect, Ethan. About how little you thought of me. And that is the hardest thing to accept. I paused, my voice shaking with emotion. I trusted you. I trusted you with everything. My heart, my future, and now I have nothing. You've taken everything from me, and for that, there's no forgiveness. I turned to leave, but I felt his hand on my arm. It was a touch I had once known so well, a touch I had once sought comfort in. But now it only felt like a reminder of everything that had been lost. Please, Sophia, don't leave me. We can fix this, he pleaded, his voice trembling. But I was already gone. I yanked my arm away and walked out of the room, out of the house that had once been my home. The door slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in months, I could finally breathe.
The days that followed our confrontation felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog. It was as if everything had suddenly shifted in the blink of an eye. The life I had spent years building with Ethan, the trust I thought we had been reduced to rubble. I felt an overwhelming mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite explain yet. Maybe it was a sense of finality, a feeling that I was finally moving out of the darkness, even if it was just a tiny step. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was in control now, and that terrified Ethan more than anything else. For days, I didn't hear from him. The house was eerily quiet, with no more phone calls or apologies or desperate attempts to fix what he had broken. He knew that he couldn't charm me into forgiving him, that his lies couldn't mend the rift he had created. I hadn't even spoken to him since our last confrontation, and the silence between us felt suffocating. I was becoming the woman I was always meant to be, someone who no longer needed his approval, his validation, or his love to feel complete. But that didn't mean the pain was gone. I would lie if I said I didn't still think about the good moments, the times when we laughed together or when things seemed perfect. They felt like distant memories now, as if they belonged to someone else. I didn't want to live in the past anymore, but it was hard to move on when the echoes of those times still haunted me. It was Saturday morning when I finally decided I couldn't keep running from it. I needed to face the truth, to look at what I had left, and to make a real plan for the future. I couldn't wait any longer to see what Ethan was going to do. He had kept his silence for too long, and I knew that at some point he would try to make things right. Maybe not with an apology, but with manipulation. He was too skilled at it not to try. I called my lawyer, Derek, the one I had reached out to earlier in the week. His calm, measured voice on the other end of the line was a source of comfort. "Hello, Sophia. What can I do for you today?" "I need you to help me move forward," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "I can't sit here anymore pretending this is going to get better. I need a divorce, and I need it now." There was a pause on the line, and then Derek spoke with a reassuring tone. "Understood. Let's get the paperwork started. But we need to take a careful approach. Ethan will try to fight this, but with the documentation you have, we'll make sure he understands it's over." I felt a sense of calm settle over me. It was time. I was done with waiting, done with wondering what he would do next. He had made his choice when he chose her over me, and now it was time for me to choose myself. But even as I planned my next steps, there was still that nagging feeling deep inside. What was Ethan doing now? How far was he willing to go to make things right? And more importantly, how much damage was he capable of doing? I couldn't let my guard down just yet. A few days passed, and then I received the call that I had been expecting. It was from Ethan, and for the first time, he sounded desperate, as if he had finally realized the gravity of the situation. "Sophia, can we talk? Please, I need to explain." "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "There's nothing to talk about anymore, Ethan. You've made your choices, and I've made mine." "Please, just listen," he begged, his voice strained. "I made a huge mistake. I didn't mean for things to get this far. I'm sorry. I love you, and I want to fix this." His words felt like a slap in the face. After everything, he was still trying to pull me back in with empty promises? I felt a deep, bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I held it back. "I don't need your love, Ethan," I said, my voice ice cold. "You've already shown me who you really are, and it's not someone I want in my life." There was a long pause, followed by a quiet, broken-sounding, "Please don't do this." I could hear the desperation in his voice, but it only strengthened my resolve. This was the same man who had stolen from me, who had betrayed my trust and taken my love for granted. He didn't get to turn up at the last minute and act as if he could undo everything with an apology. "I'm done, Ethan. And you should be too. This is over." I hung up the phone before he could say anything else, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace in my heart. This was no longer about what he wanted. It was about what I needed and what I deserved. The next few days were filled with paperwork, meetings with my lawyer, and finalizing the divorce proceedings. Ethan didn't contact me again, and that, in a way, was a relief. I knew he would try to manipulate the situation, to guilt-trip me into forgiving him, but I was past that point. I had found my strength, and I wasn't going to let him take it from me again. Then came the next blow. It came not from Ethan, but from someone I hadn't expected. The company, the firm that I had spent years building my career with, was suddenly pulling away from me. My colleagues, the ones who had once respected me, started avoiding me. The office felt colder than ever. I was out of the loop, ignored and excluded. David, one of the senior architects, stopped by my desk one afternoon with a look of concern on his face. "Sophia, are you okay? I know what's happening with Ethan, and I just wanted to make sure you're all right." I nodded, but there was something else in his eyes, something I couldn't quite explain. "Thanks, David, but it's all in motion now. I'm taking care of everything." He hesitated before speaking again. "It's not just that. Karen's been pushing for this. She's been talking behind your back, trying to ruin your reputation. She's got the board on her side, and they're all working against you." My heart dropped. Karen, the same woman who had been undermining me at every turn, stealing my ideas and presenting them as her own. The same woman who had manipulated everyone into thinking I was the one at fault. "What is she saying?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. David sighed. "She's trying to frame you as the one who's been slacking off. She's telling everyone you're the one who has performance issues. She even tried to have you written up for poor work. It's all part of her plan to take credit for your designs." The anger that had been building inside me finally boiled over.
It wasn't enough that Ethan had betrayed me. Now Karen was trying to take everything from me too. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I spent the next few hours gathering evidence, documenting Karen's behavior, and contacting my lawyer again. I was no longer just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for my career, for my reputation, and for everything I had built over the years. This fight was just beginning, and I wasn't going to back down. But the walls were closing in. Karen had already made her move, and now it was up to me to fight back.
The aftermath of the divorce was overwhelming, but the betrayal by Ethan and Karen was far from over. In the weeks that followed, it felt like I was constantly fighting battles on multiple fronts: personal, emotional, and professional. It was one thing to deal with the end of a marriage, but the shock of seeing someone I had trusted, Karen, actively trying to ruin my career added a new level of complexity to the situation. I had always been a hard worker, but now it seemed like my very livelihood was under attack. I knew I couldn't let them win, but how do you fight when it feels like the world is against you? Karen, with her calculated charm and manipulative tactics, had already begun weaving a narrative that painted me as the problem, the person who had failed. The board meetings, the whispers in the halls, the cold stares from colleagues I once trusted, everything about my workplace had become hostile. I spent my days in a haze of paperwork, phone calls with my lawyer, and conversations with people who seemed to be pulling away from me. Every time I went into the office, I could feel the walls closing in. My name wasn't mentioned in meetings anymore, and my ideas were being brushed aside in favor of Karen's. Her rapid promotion to creative director was both infuriating and expected. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had been naive to think that I could keep working alongside her without facing consequences. She had positioned herself for success in a way that was nothing short of ruthless, and now her success was built on my hard work. But I wasn't going to let this be my story. I wasn't going to let Karen steal everything from me. Not my career, not my dignity. I had spent years building my reputation, proving myself in an industry that was not always kind to women. I wasn't going to let her take that away from me without a fight. That fight started with a single phone call. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I picked up the phone to call David, the man who had been a constant source of support during all of this. He had seen what had happened to me. He knew the truth, and I knew he would help me find a way to move forward. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need your help. Karen's not done yet. She's still trying to undermine me, and I need to take back control. I can't let her destroy my career." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before David spoke. "I've been thinking the same thing, but Sophia, it's going to take more than just fighting her. You need to have a plan, a real plan." I nodded, even though I knew he couldn't see me. "I'm ready. I've got enough evidence to prove everything, her theft, her lies, the way she manipulated everyone. But it's not just about that anymore. I need to rebuild. I need to show people who I really am. I've spent too many years letting Karen take credit for my work." David's voice softened, his tone full of understanding. "You've always been the one to fix things, Sophia. But now it's time for you to focus on fixing yourself. You need to let people know that this isn't just about the designs. It's about who you are as a professional. You've built something incredible here, and you deserve to lead." I knew he was right. The realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about fighting back. It was about proving that I was worthy of more than the scraps Karen had left behind. I wasn't going to be the woman who sat quietly in the shadows while others took what was mine. No. This was the moment where I reclaimed my narrative. The next day, I started putting my plan into motion. The first step was something simple, but necessary. I updated my resume. It had been years since I had thought about it, and the idea of listing my accomplishments felt almost foreign. But as I started typing, something inside me shifted. I was reminded of the person I had become, someone who had led projects, who had turned ideas into realities, and who had fought to prove myself in a male-dominated industry. I wasn't just someone who could design beautiful spaces. I was someone who could build legacies.
I also took the step of contacting a few former clients, people who had worked with me before the Karen debacle began. I needed their support, but more importantly, I needed them to see me for who I really was. Not the woman Karen had framed, but the visionary who had designed some of the firm's most successful projects. I was pleasantly surprised when a few of them agreed to meet with me, to hear my side of the story. These were people I had worked with closely, and I knew that if I could just get them on my side, it would be a game changer. I also reached out to a former colleague, Olivia, who now worked at a competing firm. Olivia had always been a straight shooter, someone who had admired my work and had given me the honest feedback I needed. She was someone I trusted. "You need to start networking, Sophia. You're too good at what you do to be stuck in this mess. Come over and meet with my team. We've been looking for someone with your expertise. If Karen's playing dirty, we'll make sure you get the respect you deserve." Her words lifted me up in ways I didn't realize I needed. As the days went on, I reached out to more people, made more connections, and began to build the network that had been eroded by Karen's manipulations. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for the phone to ring. I was going to make it ring. And I was going to make sure that the calls I received were for the right reasons, because I was the best at what I did, not because I had been a victim of someone else's theft. The more I spoke to people, the more I realized that there were others out there who had been wronged in similar ways. Other women in the industry who had faced Karen's manipulations, her stealing of ideas, and her careful efforts to climb to the top at any cost. I wasn't alone in this, and together we could make a difference. It wasn't long before I got the call I had been waiting for. David had been speaking to the board members of Reynolds, and they had requested a meeting. It was time for me to take the next step. I could feel the tension building in my chest, but this time it was different. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I met with the board and we discussed everything: my designs, my work, and Karen's attempts to claim credit for what wasn't hers. With the evidence I had gathered, the emails, the files, and the testimonies of my former colleagues, it was clear Karen had been manipulating the system for years. And the truth was out. By the end of the meeting, the board made their decision. I would be reinstated as the creative director, a role I had earned but had never been allowed to hold. I was also given the go-ahead to lead the Portland waterfront project, the very project Karen had tried to claim as her own. As I walked out of the meeting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. It was the validation I had been waiting for, the recognition that I had earned. And I wasn't done yet. The fight wasn't over, but I had won this battle. And as I stood there in the boardroom, I knew one thing for sure. I was back.